Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Damn Show on the Critical Blast podcast. I'm your host, Damascus Mintzmeyer. Our regular host, RJ Carter, isn't here tonight because he's on the run after stealing a leprechaun's pot of gold this morning. Don't worry, though. He'll be back on our next show, and in the meantime, I'll be interviewing returning guest Michael Gallagher, whose science fiction novella Cyberpub Tales of the Crossroads Tavern Regulars comes out Friday from Seven Sorrows Publishing. For the next hour, we'll be talking about cyberpunk, pulp fiction, outer space, and just what it is to make bars such a good place to tell stories. Happy St. Patrick's Day, Michael.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, man. And look, you've got a genuine Irishman on the show on top of that, too.
Excellent.
Now, to be fair to Howard, I did dare him to steal the leprechaun's pot of gold. He didn't have to listen to me, but I did dare him. You know, he can't resist a dare.
I see. So you're the one responsible for that.
Yeah, I get up to my shenanigans, especially on a day like this.
Well, it's nice to have you back as a guest. It's been a while since you've been on the show, so let's remind our viewers about you by answering this question. Who are you, what do you do, and why do you do it?
My name is Michael Gallagher. I'm a graphic designer by trade. I'm basically a writer because if I didn't start writing, I'd be in a terrible place. Basically, I write because these terrible demons in my head won't leave me alone until I exercise them onto the page. Basically, I started out a few years ago. I started out a few years ago with a crazy off the wall idea for my first novel, Body and Blood, which is near future cyberpunk tale of a couple of Catholic priests who run a parish in a future where demonic possession is very common. And they run the standard parish business in addition to thwarting off street gangs in the thrall of cults and rub elbows with biker gangs. It's a very fun read. You were like one of the first people I ever got to hop on a live stream for. It was a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And since then, I've written a lot of short fiction. I've made probably about a half a dozen anthology appearances. I've been a regular friend of the show over the years through various projects. Definitely. And as anyone who's listened to me hem and haw with you in the past knows, I get the ideas for my stuff from the damnedest places. And this novella that we're going to talk about tonight was actually birthed out of a typo, if you can believe that. So Here we are.
Actually, that goes right into my next question. Tell us about your new novella, Cyberpub. What's it about, and how did you come up with the idea?
I'm going to try to answer that as best I can because I swear for about half of it, I really don't know. The whole thing was that this is going to sound so boring, but the whole thing started when I was just typing something. I don't even remember what it was I was typing one night, but I went to type the word cyberpunk, my favorite literary genre of all, to anyone who knows me. And, the N and the B key are right next to each other, and I accidentally typed cyberpub. And I was in mid hitting the delete key when my brain just said, stop, don't do anything, Think about this for a second. And I just stared at the word on my screen, and immediately I just had this idea of a bar, some dive bar in a cyberpunk setting. And just stories just immediately started to form out of the ether. And it really, it's the very basic kernel of it is somewhat derivative of Spider Robinson's Callahan's Cross Time Saloon in the broad strokes. But this eventually came out to, since I've been really writing a lot of short fiction rather than long form fiction, really these past few years, I'm mostly going the Harlan Ellison route. It seems I can't seem to finish a novel with a gun to my head these days. I just had this idea to sort of do like a vignetted anthology, single author anthology, where this dive bar was kind of the connective tissue, and I would tell the stories of all the various vagrants and uh, bad apples and such that were, as the subtitle indicates, regulars at this particular establishment.
Well, let's go into more detail about the world that Cyberpunk takes place in. Resnick 7 is the planet.
Mm-hmm.
It's a rough place, and the one thing I mentioned in my review was how fleshed out the setting was. It seems so real. I really like the detail that you added to everything. Did you sit
Thank
down
you.
beforehand and write out a compendium of the history of Resnick 7 and how its society worked, or did you just make all that up on the fly?
Absolutely not. I'm a pantser of the highest order. I don't think of anything when I sit down and start writing. I kind of just it's like I said. I let the demons just come out. You know, it takes over. So the the planet where this all takes place, to allusion to the my favorite hero of all of science fiction, Mike Resnick, the man whose novels in the 80s and 90s, especially that stuff, just made me fall in absolute love with science fiction, and I didn't realize it at the time. Pulp, really, in general, because Resnick wrote everything. It was incredible when you read about what this guy wrote about. In addition to being one of the most prolific authors of science fiction, maybe the last half century, he wrote a regular horse racing column. He loved horse racing. You know, he wrote comedy, like his two Lucifer Jones books is basically like a madcap meets sex comedy version of Indiana Jones, this like fumbling Indiana Jones type character. Um, the guy was just a phenomenal writing talent. But ever since I read the first book I ever read from him, Walpurgis 3, which was about a hitman that was hired to take out a cult leader on a planet that was populated by Satanists. I mean, my God. First of all, there's not a more 80s idea for a sci-fi story than that, but like it just immediately hooked me, and it's a short read, and it's friggin' phenomenal, not a wasted word. And so I was just hooked, and so I picked next thing, Santiago, 1986. At the time, probably his big magnum opus. It was supposed to be turned into a movie, never went through. Which has like a whole rogues gallery of hitmen and these larger than life characters. The Widowmaker trilogy, the Soothsayer trilogy, I mean, this guy just all through the 80s and 90s and right into about 2000 was when about I stopped reading him. But I mean, this guy wrote hitmen, you know, gang members, street toughs, bounty hunters, you know, all these sorts of types, and they were always planet hopping across this vast, expansive universe, and all these different novels that don't seem interconnected actually take place in this massive timeline that's universally known as the Birthright universe, right? And like you actually like different novels will tell you like different governments that are in power, and it gradually degrades from like a democracy to a republic to an oligarchy to a, you know, it's funny how the government gradually like rises and falls in civilization and rule of law. But anyway, one of the ways that Resnick loved to name his planets was to give it a name and then a Roman numeral, right? So like Walpurgis 3, Roman numeral 3, and there was always the government center of his world was a planet called Delarus 8. And, you know, so that was just how he kind of liked to name his worlds. And when I thought about what to name this planet, I thought, you know, this would really be a very much an homage to Resnick, because I'm writing about a bunch of ne'er-do-wells and hitmen and stuff like that, who in a lot of his books, you know, also spent their time in bars and clubs and places like that and rubbing elbows with the underbelly of wherever they happen to be. And so I didn't set out to do this, but it just very much wound up being this very Resnician work, really. And so I sort of tip my hat to my hero there by naming the planet Resnick 7. which is a planet that is kind of in a middle stage of, it's not this like unpopulated backwater, but it's not this like cramped, bustling, already established like mega city. Anyway, it's like it's getting there. Lots of places to go and kinds of people that you'll meet, but there's nothing like pervasive surveillance, or very much still sort of a frontier in that sense. And so there's a lot of potential in a place like that. It's very much sort of a frontier sort of place. And the bar, which is called the Crossroads Tavern, serves as the kind of place where lots of people of all kinds of places go through, from like, working stiffs to whoever. And it's also where people tend to air their problems. So I thought, wow, this would, in this kind of world, it'd also be the kind of natural magnet for problem solvers in a sense, And so there just seemed to be very fertile ground for lots of stories to come out of it.
Yeah, let's talk about the main man himself, Boniface Ahern, aka Bonnie. He's the central figure of the book that ties everything together, and Crossroads is his bar. But he's more a background figure in the book than the true lead, but he is the most important person in the book. So let's talk about what the inspiration behind him was.
So it's funny, Boniface went in a very different direction from when I started out, because he actually originated as something of a more sinister figure than he wound up being, because I had this whole idea. The reason I named the tavern the Crossroads Tavern was because I very, very early on in this book, in its very primordial stages, I had the idea to include a specific line that someone would say, and it wound up never making it into the book. But I had this idea that there was going to be this kind of twist line where someone would say, "Who do you make a deal with at the crossroads?"
Ah.
And of course, if you know anything about American folklore, who is that, Dan?
Of course. Good old devil.
The devil, right?
Yeah.
And so I originally had this idea to make Boniface this very this kind of person you are never actually sure if he was who he appeared to be, because he's jovial. He's a bartender. He's jovial. He's got a joke. He's welcoming. Doesn't matter what you did or who you are or what problem you have, he'll listen to you. And he probably knows a guy who knows a guy. But that there would always maybe be this underlying what if sort of a factor about him. And as the book developed, that never really panned out. He's not really a sinister figure. He's not exactly a moral figure, certainly.
Right.
Because he's the indirect conduit for a lot of people get. Right. He's an indirect conduit for people getting killed and stuff like that. But he's got a lot. He does have a lot of dirt under his fingernails himself, because he's kind of the middleman for a lot of things. And he connects the various hitmen with their jobs and their targets and stuff like that. And you need a gun, he can get you a gun. He's got a very interesting safe in the back of his office. You know what I mean? But he never really panned out to be this sinister figure. Morally gray, certainly. But he's kind of so he's not the main character, but he's sort of almost like this orphical.
He's like the key figure, though. Yeah.
He is, in a way. He's kind of the binding figure to the whole universe, but you never really find out much about him or his backstory, because the spotlight's on the various figures that he interacts with for the stories. And who knows? Maybe in a future edition we'll flesh him out a bit more. But it didn't happen to. Wasn't in the cards for this title.
Yeah, I definitely got the feeling reading this that Bonnie had done so much in his past that we didn't get to see. Like it's insinuated that he's done and accomplished and been through a hell of a lot. He's just got this
Mm-hmm.
chill vibe, but you know that he could do probably anything if he had to. Like,
Right.
what
Yeah.
I liked about his
Like
character.
very unassuming character, but you'd be, I don't think I'm spoiling anything here, but in one of the stories, there's a scene where two patrons kind of get into a scuffle near the end of the night, and one of them's speaking a language that's not English,
Hmm.
and Boniface just kind of goes over and he kind of reaches his hand underneath his apron to just kind of send a message and
Hmm.
effortlessly switches to this language that this other guy is speaking and kind of surprises him. So nothing happens. The fight breaks up and everybody leaves. But there's kind of this moment where you realize, he's ready for a lot more than folks would probably assume just by looking at him. He's
Yeah, he's
yeah.
he's definitely the linchpin. But let's talk about some of the individual characters that the stories are centered around. Let's talk about Kaz. He's the central figure of the very first story. Tell us a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit about his journey and what the inspiration was behind his character.
All right. So Kaz was kind of interesting. And again, this is just pantsing and kind of just going by whatever just my brain tells me to write as I'm doing this. I kind of just started out, okay, I'm going to have like, there's got to be one guy who's just sort of a run of the mill street tough, like leg breaker sort of a thing. But I didn't want to write somebody who'd I'd ever written before. So I thought, okay, who haven't I written before? And I thought the thought came to me of someone who was Kazakh, right? The sort of
Hmm.
what's interesting about those sorts of people is they are spread across a pretty good space of land across Eurasia, and you can run into someone who almost looks Russian, who's Kazakh, or you
Hmm.
can run into somebody who almost looks Chinese, who's Kazakh. And
Right.
I kind of went with more of the latter. I said, okay, I've never written anybody like this before, so I shortened that. I called him Kaz. I thought, okay, that sounds pretty cool. That sounds cyberpunk. And uh, he starts out as kind of just a run of the mill sort of a collection. He's got to go to this fancy this guy who's kind of a corporate stiff owes somebody else money, and he's got to go and go and collect. But he's loaded up with wetware, and he's got this kind of biological OS that runs in his head called dostim, which is the Kazakh word for friend, by the way.
No, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Um, which is why whenever he calls it up, he says dostim. It answers back to him, "Yes, my friend." That's why
Oh,
that is, by the way.
oh, that's
So
cool.
yeah, I thought that was really cool. I said I was researching stuff. I said, oh, I can really make this work. And he so he starts out as kind of this very sort of like it's established. He starts out, he's talking to Bonnie while he's crumpling up a bunch of losing like gaming tickets, lottery tickets type things. He's got a little bit of a gambling addiction himself, and he'll pretty much do anything for money. It doesn't matter, and but when he goes to collect, and this kind of suit, these guys are from two different opposite poles of the world, the high rise and the gutter, and the guy makes him a counter offer. He's like, look, I can show you something that's worth a lot more money. Just let me just show you, and I'll convince you. And Kaz reluctantly lets him, so he drives him to this warehouse where they manufacture androids, basically.
Hmm.
And I'm not going to spoil it, but it turns out that what they're manufacturing is something that's so revulsive that it causes Kaz to discover that he has more of a moral compass than he ever imagined that he did. So it turns into this righteous uh, God, I don't know, destruction of Sodom type of
Yeah.
climax at the end of the story. But it's a wild ride getting there from point A to point B.
Yeah, that revelation of that story, when he finds out what the I'll call them joy dolls. That's what they were referred to in the story. What they
Yeah.
were, the niche clientele that they were intended for. When it's revealed who they were, I was like, whoa. But then again, if that technology actually was real, that probably would happen. I mean, you'd get that seedy underbelly that was misappropriating that for that for sure. So it
Well, I don't know
struck
if
me as a
you
very realistic thing.
I don't know if you ever heard the story a few years ago, and I don't. There's a woman who was browsing Amazon uh,
Mm-hmm.
one day, and she found a listing for a sex doll on Amazon because they sell those things on there.
Mm-hmm.
That and but she was horrified to see that she was absolutely convinced that they had modeled this doll that she was looking at after her daughter, who
Mm-hmm.
was young.
Oh wow.
And she sued them, and she became convinced. I don't know how this panned out or not, but she was convinced that this company had scraped photos off of her Facebook page of her kid
Oh
and
wow.
modeled one of their dolls after her. Yeah. Now I don't know if this was true or how this all panned out in court,
Mm-hmm.
but I remember reading this and thinking, yeah, I can see somebody doing this.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. I can see people doing that.
it just because it's not legal doesn't mean they won't try.
Right.
There's nothing a lot of these corporate entities just will not at least try to see if they can get away with for as long as
Mm-hmm.
possible. And I remember reading about that, and I remember everybody just calling it crazy. I'm like, this is not crazy. Even if
Well,
this
it's like
didn't
what I
happen, I can see it happening.
yeah, it's like what I always say when people are like, well, that can't happen. People wouldn't do that. That's against the law. And I'm like, murder is against the law, but people still kill each other. Like, I mean, like, it's like just because something is illegal doesn't mean people don't do it.
Oh my God. Yeah, I know.
But I think it would be cool if you
And
had like
so that's how we kick the book off. Then we go into
a Crasher story.
yeah, go for it.
Crasher is the two-part story. This one really impressed me because the first part
Crasher,
you leave
yeah.
on you leave like the first part on a cliffhanger, and before I knew there was a second part to it, I was like, how can you leave it like that? How could you leave it like that? But
Yeah.
but fine, there was
Yeah,
a
it just
second
turned
part.
out that I realized I tried more or less to keep the stories the same length, and I realized his was getting a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. So I was like, you know what? I'll split this into two stories. Yeah. So Crasher is this recluse who just moved to Resnick because he was offered a job and like a corporate shabby apartment, and he wouldn't have to leave or go anywhere or do anything. He'd just get to do his job at his apartment, and they even would deliver his groceries to him, and he just wouldn't have to talk to anybody. And that was great for him. So he took that chance. There's a little more backstory to it, but that's the long and the short of it. So he's this incredibly awkward guy. He's got really zero life
Yeah.
experience at all, really, but his actual name's Richard. He gets Crasher's sort of like an underground name given to him because he has a job more or less like moderating these massive game servers that are hosted on Resnick because people need to play their games. And he, as a side hustle, he crashes the accounts of of trolls and people who others ask him. He's like, I don't like this guy. He had my number in this multiplayer game. I want you to take his account out. Cool, fine. Give me 100 credits. Bam, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
So his nickname's Crasher. And the only person he's really friendly with is this little old lady who lives across the street from him, who's a widow. She got to inherit the apartment from her husband, who died on the job at a at a mine. And they meet once a week and they have dinner. That's like the only time he ever leaves his apartment, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's also, so, naturally the guy's a lonely heart, and he, on this planet, just like here, there's subscription services for everything imaginable, and there's tech to match it, and
Mm-hmm.
sure you don't have to use your imagination very much for that. And so he's got this kind of, video girlfriend that he chats with and who pretends to care about him, and, all that stuff, until, he gets in trouble at work, so they freeze his account while they're investigating complaints because they hear he's been crashing people's accounts.
Mm-hmm.
That finally catches up with him, so his job freezes his bank account, and he falls behind on payments for his girlfriend's subscription, basically.
Mm-hmm.
This gets him a visit from some very large gentlemen who are not too happy about this, And when he pleads his case, he's like, look, I don't have it. I can't get to my money. Okay, just wait, They break into the little old lady's apartment and violently murder her in
Mm-hmm.
detail that a couple of my beta readers have said, you really didn't have to go into that level of detail, but I felt I did.
I think you did. It just
drove
home the brutality of it, because that was his only worldly connection. So,
and he cowers in his doorstep because he's afraid to leave his apartment, and she's right at 10 feet away. They're murdering her.
Mm-hmm.
He's I'll spoil this one. The thug who murders her uses a clothing iron to point the end of a clothing iron to bash her face in, basically. And she's begging him to just come out of his apartment, and she's saying, come on, honey, dinner's on, anything, just trying to get him to leave. And he to his everlasting shame, he can't bring himself to do it, and he watches her die because of his cowardice. And what was one of the toughest scenes I've ever written in my life, I swear to God. But this then finally spurs him to action and to a fateful meeting with Boniface, because he goes in search to get a gun. And I'll leave it there, but that's that's the start of Crasher's story.
Yeah. I love the second part.
That one's
the second part, I won't spoil it for anybody, but when he meets his online girlfriend at the company headquarters, that was an interesting little scene there. I like that. It was an interesting confrontation.
Everything on the internet's fake and gay, man. But third story then. So there's 4 stories. Just to let you know. The third story then is one about Mac. This one was a little bit more developed. I actually had this one on the back burner. I submitted it to a story, to a contest, a fiction contest that didn't get selected. But that's why this one just kind of and my cap for that one was 5,000 words. It's the shortest I've ever written. So that's why that one really had to hit the ground running and just get moving. Still, once I got to, I said, oh well, this will be perfect for this. I can make this fit for this world, because Mac is kind of sort of a rogue. He flees to Resnick 7 to get away from the angry father of a social media influencer chick that he broke the heart of.
Mm-hmm.
He did not realize her father was the head of an organized crime family. She didn't get her reach organically. It came from daddy's money. And so he flees to Resnick 7, and he's just kind of he's just kind of desperate to get something going, and he finds himself sort of falling ass backwards into the PI gig because he's willing to trail spouses and willing to dig through people's garbage and willing to do all these things that people just wind up asking him to do because he's just seeking it out. He's just trying to get money. And eventually kind of just forms into a nice little business. He gets a reputation and he winds up, so normally how these things work is somebody who needs a job done calls the bar, and Boniface, once he gets a sense of what is needed, he'll tell them who's available, and he'll kind of like give the call over to whatever hired hand is sitting at the bar who fits the bill,
Mm-hmm.
And so while Boniface is in the back room, he's talking to Crasher and like, he's kind of selling him his gun or whatever, or trying to talk him out of selling him his gun at first, actually. But the phone rings and Boniface isn't there to pick it up. So he takes it upon himself to go and he takes the call for himself. And it's somebody who they speak in coded words like they're making food orders, basically,
Mm-hmm.
And he says, I need street food delivered to the walled garden, which is this literally walled off section where the planet's royalty live. This is like the emperor's palace, and everybody outside is, whoever. They could give a damn, So he hears, walled garden. Oh, there's money. He's like, oh yeah, I know exactly who you need, him, So he goes and he turns out he meets with a guy who's a chemical magnate for a chemical company, whose daughter has gone missing now, just by a few hours, and she's 19 years old, so she's an adult, but
Mm-hmm.
daddy keeps a short leash on her, and he wants her found. So Mac thinks, okay, this is pretty easy money. I'll do this. And of course, it's never that easy. Turns out that he kind of gets a beat on where she was last seen and follows a little bit of a breadcrumb, gets his ass handed to him a couple of times by people that don't like being asked the questions he's asked. And eventually does find her, and she was in a lot of trouble. But just when you think it's over and it's all nice and wrapped up, when he finds out who it actually was that ordered what was done to her be done to her, that's kind of the real twist at the end, because it kind of sews everything back up near the end. I hope I'm not being too vague about things, but I got to say that
you got to be vague about that one.
Really
the twist is too good. The twist is too good.
That was one that really turned into a stone cold actual mystery. I've never actually written an actual mystery before, but that one actually turned into a like pretty straight up like cyberpunk / mystery story. And I was very encouraged that you liked that. You really liked that one.
Yeah, that was my favorite. That was my favorite one in the entire book. It had a really great Philip Marlowe sort of gumshoe vibe set on the cyberpunk world to it. I really liked that.
I'm so glad that came across, because I was really, I mean, Marlowe, Spade, those guys, I love them, and you feel like you could never own up, but like, that came across. I was really happy to hear you say that. By the way, my God, 4 out of 5 on the Fang scale, by the way, folks, on criticalblast.com. I broke through. Was it 4? Was it 4 or 4?
I gave it a 4.5. It was
Four and
that's
a
the
half.
best thing. Yeah.
I, as I've said
Of
before,
everything
Damn's
you've
4
written,
is
this is
everybody
the
else's.
yeah. This is actually the best
Damn's 4
thing
is
of
everybody
yours that I've
else's
read to
5.
date.
So that's yeah, I was, dude, I was so flattered by your review. Thank you so much. I was just floored. But yeah, I try not to be too vague about these stories, but like I really was kind of a kid on a playground with this one. It was, I had an absolute blast writing a lot of these stories, and there's some of the more surprising ones, and I think I want to leave that. If anybody goes and picks this up, I really want to leave the best bits there for them to discover, because it's really is worth it. So
Let's talk about the
and then
last section. Let's talk about
the last
Rusty.
story, Rusty. Okay, so this guy, there's a lot of history with Rusty. Rusty is actually very personal to me. I dedicated the book to the guy who, in the real life person who inspired Rusty.
Oh, okay.
He's the crossing guard at my kid's school,
Oh, that's cool.
and he's an old timer. His name's Mike. Old timer. Pretty sure he's a veteran. The guy, and we live in a very cold, hard part of the country. We're just within spitting distance of the Canadian border. We get, this winter we've had, 20 below weather, piles of snow. I mean, it was just one of those brutal winters. This guy's out there, and he's got his vest and his stop sign. And every time we drive in the morning, wave, he pays really close attention to these kids, right? You can tell he's a sheepdog through and through, this guy. The rare occasion that he has not been at his post, and I mean, I could count them on one hand, and all the time my son's been going to his school, they'll stick a city cop there, and this guy will be like standing there with his hands in his parka, like, looking like he could give a damn, not even a stop sign, just kind of walking out into the crosswalk or whatever. There was one time when it was really cold, he sat in his patrol car. He didn't even bother to stand. Meanwhile, this guy, Mike is out there every single day. Doesn't matter the weather. Today we had like 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts. The wind was insane today. Like I've never seen in my 20 years in this town. Out there on the corner. The guy is just rock solid. He's always got a wave. He knows the kids. I mean, he's always just really like every Christmas we give him a box of chocolates. We tell him thank you, and you can tell he really appreciates it too. Like I always got the feeling that he's out there. He does it because he loves the kids, and it's this thankless, miserable job because we live in a place with miserable weather. But he's just every day. Like he's not even one of those crossing guards that sits in a chair. He's standing on that corner, and he's always there. And like every day I'm walking past this guy and I'm watching this every morning, every afternoon when I drop my son off and pick him up. And, I'm like 99% sure the guy's a Vietnam vet. And I'm just like, I'm just thinking about stuff about Mike. I'm like, I bet he's seen things. I bet he's done stuff. He's just, the guy's just got grit to him, And he inspired this character, Rusty, who's a school crossing guard, who is in witness protection.
Yes,
that's his new gig now. He was a cop that was so good at his job that so many people wanted to kill him that they had to ship him to another planet. But he's sly, and he's very resourceful, and he smuggled a lot of tech with him that he shouldn't have, that his handlers don't know that he has, and he overhears these two people arguing at the crossroads one night while he's sitting nursing his drink and playing solitaire. And he recognizes one of the people in this argument was at his school a few weeks before. And what was this guy who was running what they call a health fair? You know, they had he worked for this company. They gave all these kids free vitamins administered nasally, you know, and talked to them about the importance of blah, 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 right?
Right.
And so he sees this guy talking to somebody that is, well, one, he's at the crossroads, which is like, you know, why are you here, pal? You know, you're supposed to be hanging around going to schools. What are you doing in this joint, right? Number one, red flag. And he's talking to some guy who this younger kid who obviously looks like a drug dealer. Like he might as well just have a sign around his neck that says, I deal drugs, you know? And so these guys, these are the two that get into the argument that I mentioned earlier when I was talking about Boniface. And when they leave, Rusty tails them. And I really can't say a lot. Rusty tails him, and eventually he confronts this guy in an alleyway, in this like dark alleyway where this guy was talking to this hoodlum, you know. And he just kind of starts pressing him. He's like, "Hey, weren't you at the strange place to be this late at night, you know?" And the guy, feeling kind of cornered and threatened, reveals himself to be an alien, in fact.
I love that part.
And tries to kill Rusty. Not realizing, of course, that Rusty, being the kind of guy that he is, sharpens his little stop sign to razor blade edges and uses it to great effect during their little back alley skirmish. And so Rusty winds up killing this alien that's masqueraded himself as human, that's been going around his school, you know, and now he's got this plot to unravel, this mystery to solve, because now he realizes his kids are at stake somehow. You know, what's going on here? And he doesn't want to because he's tired and he's too old for this shit, but he knows the kids are in danger, so he kind of just clicks into this absolute unrelenting, you know, guard dog mode, and he winds up going down a rabbit hole that leads him to some really unexpected places. It goes way, way deeper than he could have ever imagined. And so that's Rusty.
I love that. I love that segment. I love that segment because it has some sci-fi horror elements to it that I thought were really, really cool. It harkens back to Body and Blood.
Yeah, you know, I guess I can't shake it. You know, I really can't totally shake the horror genes in me. You know, I set out to really do this sort of straight science fiction, pulpy, you know, gritty, sort of grimy novella, and you know, I guess I just couldn't avoid it. This one actually veers a little bit. I will say this: veers into Lovecraft territory near the end of it. It's a really wild ride to end the book on.
That fits though, because if you really think about it, a lot of Lovecraft stuff technically was sci-fi. He wrote them like horror stories, but a lot of them were about aliens coming to Earth and being in disguise and all that kind of thing. So that fits.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Color Out of Space, The Thing on the Doorstep, The Reanimator. Jesus.
From Beyond, all that stuff. Even Cthulhu, like
From Beyond, yeah, sure.
Yeah, like Cthulhu, all the great old ones.
There's plenty of grist to the mill in that regard. Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so finish this sentence. My absolute favorite scene in Cyberpub is.
Oh gosh, I have so many. I'm really unusually attached to each of these characters, but I think my favorite scene was the very, 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 very end, very last scene in the book.
Yeah.
And so we might as well just sort of spoil this because I feel like I have to. The first story with Kaz, he basically gets taken to this factory where they manufacture, lifelike animatronic sex dolls. The big reveal being that this particular company that his Mark works for is planning to unveil models that are constructed after small children.
Mm-hmm.
And that not only that, the personality templates that they are programming them with are taken from, basically what uses to run them is capsules of adrenochrome from kidnapped children. Now, I swear to God, I wrote this like 6 months before the Epstein files dropped. I did not know that this was going to break into the public consciousness. I mean, good or bad timing on my part, I guess we'll see. But that's kind of this. And so when Kaz discovers this, to his horror, his Mark is kind of showing off a prototype of one of these bots. To his horror, he hacks the android and installs malware that makes her a killing machine. It totally reprograms her personality. And he kind of just sets her loose in the factory, and they just mercilessly slaughter everyone in it. But after all that's done, he's got this little android girl that's like, what do I do? What do I do with her? Because these things are ostensibly extremely illegal still. They're not supposed to be getting made, but they've got a senator in their pocket. They've got a plan for it and everything, So at the very, 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 very end of this book that I've titled Overtime, it's kind of an addendum. Rusty is bleeding out on Boniface's pool table. He's just been patched up, and Kaz comes into the bar. It's like the crack of dawn. Boniface has just had the longest night of his life. Everybody's calling him and wanting things, and, he just wants all this shit to be over with. And Kaz walks in with the most illegal thing you could possibly have on the entire planet, one of these little android girls. And Kaz begs him. He's like, Boniface, look, I can't keep this girl. I've got to go back to my employer and explain to him what happened. As it is, he's like, you got to do something. You got to take her. And Boniface is like, hell no, I can't take her. I don't want her. Why the hell did you bring her here? And Kaz says to me, he's like, look, you're Boniface Ahern. If you're not the guy, you know someone who is. And Boniface looks back into the back of the bar where Rusty's laid up, and who's never had a family of his own, who just risked his life 100 times over to foil this plot against his kids, to protect the kids that go to his school, who has nothing, knows no one, is basically a ghost because he's under witness protection as it is. And he says, yeah, you know what, I think I do. The implication, of course, being that, he's this android girl is now going to be in the custody of Rusty, and that they'll both get something that they need from each other. And so they're spoiling the whole novel for you. But that actually came very, very late in the game. I was pretty much like done with writing that, and then I just thought it's only an extra like 2.5 pages to the end of it. But it just, I had this idea to tie this really nice bow on the whole thing, because the whole novel, and it's only 119 pages, by the way, guys. It's only 119 pages, quick read, $8 when the paperback comes out, $3.99 for the Kindle. But it is an unrelenting book. Like, it just goes, there's barely enough room to breathe between these stories. And I've been criticized for that before. I guess it's just me. But at the end of this, like, really tiring, I hope you'll find, if you read this, this kind of almost tiring night that you go through of all this stuff happening to all these people. There's this last little touch of completeness and humanity and softness that just is a salve to all of the brutality that you just experienced. And I felt like I had to give it that, right? Like, it's like, I think last time I talked to you, when we were talking about Body and Blood, we talked about The Exorcist a lot, naturally.
Yeah.
And I said, 90% of that movie is just fucking horrible. It just anxiety and stress and fear and all this stuff that you're experiencing. But then that very last little end, when Reagan gets out of the car and she runs over to this random priest by the side of the road and she throws her arms around him because she can't hug Father Karras, he's dead. Right.
Right.
But she'll just do something to just thank this priest in his stead. It's almost like it heals everything. It's like I just dragged my reader through hell, I hope. A really entertaining hell. So I just, that last little bit of, like, there's still, I'm also a firm believer of, like, no matter how bad it gets, everything can't be horrible. There's always good in the darkest places, And, sure enough, that wound up, I have a lot of scenes in that book that I'm very proud of. I'm very inordinately attached to these stories. But I think that was my favorite moment.
Yeah, that was a really good touch. Because like we've talked about before on your previous appearances, how especially in horror lately in the past decade or so, there's a very nihilistic trend where there's a lot of negativity and brutality, and that's fine because that is scary stuff, but you got to have something in there, like you got to have some humor or some hope or something to make it.
Yeah.
So I mean, especially if you're reading a book or you're watching a movie, I mean, you don't want to feel like jumping off a bridge after you watch the damn thing. You know what I mean? Like,
no, right? No, I know.
But there were some of those, and that's been the trend with, like, super nihilistic stuff without any shred of hope at all. Which, it's nice to have, like you said, as you point out with The Exorcist. I mean, that is a brutal film. 50-plus-year-old movie that is still shocking, still horrifying.
Basically, the high watermark for horror.
The high watermark of horror. That's right. Still, like, the scariest movie ever made. If you poll pretty much anyone, that's gonna be in the top 2 or 3 movies right there. But it does still have a message of hope in there. So I do like that.
And what one of the things I make no bones about my faith. I'm a practicing Catholic. A lot of the guys I hang out with in the author space are Catholic and Christian, and we talk a lot about the fact that horror, really, if you do it correctly, it's like the most Christian genre there is. It should be.
Kind of, in a way. Good versus evil. There's that definite.
If you go with the theological bent, I'm saying, you know what I mean? Not something like, say, like Lovecraftian,
Mm-hmm.
Although I have my temptations to rewrite some of Lovecraft's more nihilistic yarns with my own bent there.
Mm-hmm.
Because God, as much as I love Lovecraft, and I do,
He has some idiosyncrasies in his character.
The guy's atheism and his nihilism put a damper on a lot of stories that should have been better than they were,
Mm-hmm.
But is that the reason you can do that at the end of The Exorcist, and the book is worse. They had to tamp it down for the book. And it's funny, The Exorcist. I was just watching a documentary on it the other day, and they talked about how people were walking out and fainting and throwing up in the aisles and stuff. And I was like, my God, can you imagine putting something out and it makes people react that way? I'd wear that as such a mark of pride, But
yeah.
But you can do all that if you still have the ultimate message being that good is supreme.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, right?
Right.
The great and venerated Archbishop Fulton Sheen is one of the greatest orators and minds. His shows that he had in his sermons were fantastic. He always had a great line that I loved. Satan has the hour, but Christ wins the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can apply that a lot to storytelling. Like, if you're going to go hard like that and go miserable and go dark, fine. But even if you just save that last 10% of your story, where it all swings back up, you've got to do it. You have to have that in there. Otherwise, you're just
wallowing.
You're just abusing your audience.
You're like wallowing in misery.
It really. Yeah, really. Yeah, right. And I mean, this is why, God, I feel like every time I get on a live stream, I complain about Game of Thrones, but this is why Game of Thrones got so tiresome after a while. Like,
I gave up after season 4.
It was all there was. It was
I gave
all
up
there
after
was.
season 4.
It was like, you think Jaime Lannister is going to go on this redemption arc where he's going to resist the temptations of his sister after he lost his hand and went through all this? And no, he doesn't. And you think, I forget the guy's name, but he stands in the stead of Tywin Lannister when he's sent to his death basically to go and duel the Mountain. And this guy goes in to fight in his stead, and he's actually a really able fighter. And he's all but got the duel in hand. And at the last minute, he gets his skull crushed. Oh, well, sorry.
I remember that part.
Oh my God, it's like he sets up these great arcs that are about to be these really fantastic moments. And then he just backhands you across the face. And I don't care what anybody says about George R.R. Martin. If the guy can't finish that, and he can't because he doesn't believe in it, he criticized. I mean, he's been openly critical of Tolkien and how his way of writing the Lord of the Rings and his archetypes in that universe. He can't write.
Right.
If you can't do both sides of the coin, you can't write. You can't do it. You cannot tell a story.
True.
And so
that is true.
Sadly, and for God's sake, not to get on a soapbox here, but look where we are with modern fantasy. What passes for modern mainstream fantasy in the literary world. John A. Douglas's famous viral video going into Target, right? It's all smut. It's all just.
Yeah, what did they call that in Game of Thrones? What was that word? Sexposition in Game of Thrones, where they would just have Yeah, with the characters, it'd be like talking, and then everybody would be like screwing around in the background. It's like, okay, well, we got to do something to
Right.
keep the audience's attention because it's not the story keeping their attention.
Mhm. Right. Yeah. So was never my cup of tea, and part of the reason I got into writing was to put something into the world. It's never gonna break through the noise. I know it's never gonna make a dent, but it's when I stand before God one day and I have to hold an account of what I did with the talents He gave me, I can say that at least what I put into the world was something that was worthwhile, and
Right.
that's more important than anything to me, anyway. So, uh, yeah, I just read the other day on Twitter. Somebody paid $2.5 million to adapt a fan fiction series of Harry Potter that was like a 500,000 words long at this point.
Oh,
That
wow.
has like turned a bunch of characters gay and has them shipping, and it's not going to be Harry Potter. They've got to file the serial numbers off, of course, but
Right.
this is what studios are paying millions of dollars to adapt these days. It's
Mm-hmm.
who knew Wattpad was such fertile ground for making it big.
I think if I remember correctly, even Twilight began as fan fiction, if I remember correctly. And Twilight's not good writing. Like those books are awful.
It's
Like,
no, it isn't. Good Lord. You talk about adverb abuse.
mm-hmm.
And it's funny. Nothing. She hit that, and again, it was sex, right? She hit that
Mm-hmm.
spot that just it took off in the zeitgeist, where you had really in a lot of ways it was the forerunner to the modern romantasy slops that we're dealing with now, because
Kind of.
you had a bunch of wine moms and middle-aged women fawning over teenagers, essentially,
Right. Right.
Jacob versus whatever his name, Shovelface, whatever
Edward.
his name was.
Edward and Jacob. Yeah.
Right. So it's interesting you say that, because it was kind of what we're going through is what's old is new again. It's the same. It's the same appeal, basic appeal.
Mm-hmm.
But what was funny about that was Stephanie Meyer, who was Mormon. The stories actually advocated, where it came to sex, at least, advocated wholesome things. They waited until they were married.
Yeah, true.
To finally have sex. I mean, she wrote characters that had sexual restraint, unbelievably, and leave it to and I was kind of amazed that Hollywood actually faithfully adapted that aspect of it. It's not good, but I mean, at least I can give Meyer that much credit. That she wasn't just pumping out more sewage into the well. They took the ball and did that later.
Right.
But but anyway, I could get on a whole other hour-long jag on this, and I know that we're trying
but you make good points. You make very good points. My favorite fantasy writer ever, though, is still Robert E. Howard. Like, he was the first, the best. Like, everyone's just been chasing after him for almost 100 years now. Like, no one can capture that lightning in a bottle that man had.
No, he could literally write every single genre under the sun. And of course, he had to. The pulps were paying, and his mother was sick.
Yeah.
He wrote for everything. Right. He wrote for every magazine that would take him. So he's, when I discovered him fairly recently, maybe in the past 5 years or so, immediately became my favorite writer. Resnick is Bradbury and Lovecraft are the guys who helped me discover it. Resnick is always going to have a very special place in my heart, but Howard, he's the king, man. You know, and you know, everything about that guy just thumbs his nose at literary convention, doesn't it?
Yes,
He
it does.
was untrained. You know, the guy didn't have. He was when he sold his first story, he was dirt poor. He was working. His lunch every day was 3 cents worth of ginger snaps for months on end.
Mm-hmm.
That's how poor this guy was. Picked up a pulp magazine and said, "I can do that better," and he damn well did. And you know, I just love it. It's just everything about the guy. I love everything about him. His work, how he came to be, the fact that he just bucked every trend there was under the sun, and almost everything he wrote just seemed to just lives on in the annals of literary history. Man, this guy, and the fact that no one will touch his properties, right? Like they're just talking about maybe doing a new Conan, like for the first time in like 35 years, maybe sort of. It's rumors, right?
Right.
But like no one's done anything with El Barak. No one's done anything with
there was that one Cold Conqueror movie.
Who's
back in the 90s?
Marine? Cold the Conqueror. With Kevin
Solomon
Sorbo.
Kane.
They did do
Solomon Kane.
Nobody. There was one Solomon Kane movie in 2009, right? That's still like the
right,
which fantastic movie, but it's like no
was that ever released in America?
No,
I remember that was released in Europe.
With Sailor Steve. Not until like 3 or 4 years after. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. Because I remember when I saw it.
I think only the DVD.
Yeah, because I saw it like when
they had distribution problems.
I saw like a bootleg version of it. The first time I ever saw it was like a bootleg version back in like 2011 or something. And I remember at that time it had come out in Europe, but not in America. Right. Yeah. But that movie is awesome. You get so much cool stuff out of Solomon Kane.
And the thing is like if Hollywood really wanted to, they could have fuck the Star Wars universe. Yeah. I'm not sure if Howard's stuff is public domain yet. Probably not, but I mean,
probably not yet.
They could have whole universes of stuff, and probably not yet. But like they've got whole universes of a dozen different viable properties and sequels until the end of time, and nobody will touch it. For fuck's sake, Buck Rogers just entered the public domain. Why isn't it?
That's right. Yes, it did. This year.
There's stuff out there. And
but they like bringing, the problem with Hollywood is they like to bring as much money out of the fans as possible from every franchise. Like let's say like the Halloween movies. Now they've got because those last 3 Halloween movies they had were
but for God's sake, don't you know when it's dead? Like when there's
exactly. When
these things become
because they've got like Halloween example, they've
money
got
than they're worth to produce.
They've got like 12 movies. The first 7 were in one timeline. Then they've got the Rob Zombie movies. Then they went back and they've got the last 3, which I believe were just sequels to the first one. So technically they're like an alternate timeline. And it's like, what are you guys doing? Like they're just abusing the fans.
That was exactly the question on my lips. I was like, what are we doing here, man? You know?
Yeah.
Pity the writers that have to get the next script on that one, you know? Oh, and speaking of which, I see you've got a Crow poster behind you. How'd you like that? How'd you like that remake?
Oh, I didn't even waste my time. Yeah. No, I didn't even bother.
Good. Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
But no, I knew when that movie was coming out, when the remake of that was coming out, I was like, did you guys not figure it out from the 3 sequels that sucked? That the remake is gonna suck too. That's a property that they should have just stopped at number 1 and forget it. And the sad thing is with The Crow is it's kind of like you're saying about Robert E. Howard. You could do so much with the Crow as a concept. You could go into the past, you could go into the future, you could do anything, any time period. You could have. I always thought it'd be really cool if they did one like in the 1920s with like a black blues player or something. You know, it would be like the Crow. That would be so cool. That would totally fit. That would totally fit. But no, they only want to do. They want to copy the first one as much as possible every single time. And of course, they're all going to suck because they're just an imitation. But you could go so many different directions with that.
The Brandon Lee's Crow, just like some films are just the end result of circumstances that you can never replicate again, right?
Right.
Clue is a good example of that, right?
That's a good movie.
Right. The Warriors is a good example of that. There's some movies that just can't be remade because you won't be able to put those ingredients back in the pot. And Brandon Lee's Crow was the definitive Crow. It's like you can't have a stand-in after that. No disrespect to what's his name there that played in the sequel, because he's a great actor. I can't think of his name. Norwegian guy. He played Pennywise. What's?
In the remake with Bill Skarsgård. Yeah.
Bill Skarsgård, yeah. He's a great actor. I feel bad that his talents were wasted on that dog shit script. But I mean, this is like the great frustration of the age. Is like Hollywood doesn't know when to say stop, and there's a glut.
They go for the easy. They go for the easy buck. They go for the easy buck because they're scared to try anything new. But they don't realize they need the new blood to keep. They need the new blood to keep going. If they keep just rehashing the same stuff, and it's going to die out.
What I feel like you just raised an interesting thing. They want to go for the cheap, the
easy buck,
cheap buck, basically, right? Like easy buck. Like there's a lot of things, IPs, series, stuff that you could pick from that wouldn't take a huge budget to faithfully reproduce. I mean, not everything's got to be like, Marvel level, Amazon Studios level production. I mean, the first Saw movie was made by 2 film students, and part of the whole reason for the story was they only had one room to use as a set. Yeah, that's so they had to set most of the movie in this one room. I personally, I mean, when I was doing studio work in my graphic design career, I loved the clients that had no money. I said, yeah, give me all the shoestring budgets, because you just find creative ways to make things happen. I'll always bring up Aliens, done for like $16 million. 50 years later, it's like one of the only movies in the series worth a damn. Right. It's the one everybody remembers. And you don't. They don't have to dump a ton of money or risk losing a ton of money. They can get hungry second string actors who are looking for a breakout, who would leap on these things. I mean, I don't know, man.
Because when you have like a low budget, it's like desperation is the mother of creativity. You have to come up with another way. You have to come up with something in the story that works. You can't rely on just special effects or having you have to have the story has to be solid. Because the story is like really, really important. That's like the most fundamental thing in a movie or a novel. But that's like the most fundamental thing. If you've got a good story, stories can last forever, like across generations. Like Dracula. Think about how many different different iterations of Dracula has there been, because the story itself is so solid. You can put Dracula in the future, you can put Dracula anywhere, because the fundamentals of the story are absolutely stone cold solid.
Yeah. You're right. Actually, it's funny. A meme's going around right now that talk these days, and somebody said, if you had a show called Surf Dracula, like 20 years ago, you'd see him surfing every day. It's funny you bring up Dracula, because if you had a show called Surf Dracula, every week you'd see him in some kind of wacky adventure on his surfboard. But now, they got to spend 6 episodes before he picks up his first board. He takes his first lesson now, Also,
in comics, they call that deconstructed
this
storytelling.
Is just a funny anecdote. I don't know if you've heard, speaking of Dracula, yeah, exactly. It's the worst ever. But Cynthia Erivo, have you heard what she's up to these days?
No.
This is the actress who's played the bad witch in Wicked, and
okay.
Has kind of gotten into a bit of infamy because she got like really creepily attached to Ariana Grande.
Oh, I see.
Her, do you know the actress I'm talking about?
So
she started out in stage acting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she started out in stage acting, and right now, so movies haven't been too kind to her.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, she's doing a London stage production of Dracula, where she is playing every character.
Huh. Okay.
29 roles.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, I'm personally, I mean, I'm just dying to see how they pull this off.
Yeah.
Previews haven't been good. But yeah, some degree, I feel like every time you and I get together, we wind up sawing this log. But I mean, it's the state of things. What can you do?
Right. So what's next for Michael Gallagher?
Oh, what's next for Michael Gallagher? Good question. Because I've still got my second novel on the back burner that is, I don't know, man. It's been like my Chinese democracy. If anyone out there is familiar with Guns N' Roses lore,
yeah, the album
great
took
to get
like
that
20
done.
years.
I'd love to see it done, because it really is a fan. Yeah. Like, I started writing this thing like 5 years ago, and I'm like 80% done with it, and I don't know why, but I just can't seem to finish it. And every time I go back to it, I read it, and I'm like, holy fuck, this is a great book, and I can't wait for it to come out, I just would love to finish it. But so I don't know. I don't really have anything besides on the front burner, but this came out of a typo. The first story I ever sold came out of an old Johnny Carson joke. I don't know.
There's certain stories.
Something will hit me while I'm mowing the lawn, and I'll go run off to go write something.
Yeah. Mowing the lawn and doing the dishes and taking a shower. Those are like the when your mind is like absolutely doing something else. That's when the best story ideas come.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
There's the novel I've been working on. I've been working on a novel about 5 years too. I like to describe it as my own personal Stalingrad. It's just like a stalemate, It's just like yeah. That's
yeah.
That's the way I always
yes,
describe it.
I know exactly how you feel. Yes, I do. just looking through the
It's
tree
like,
line at the other side, and
yeah,
just
exactly. You're like, it's
nobody
only
doing nothing.
500 feet if I can just get there across the trenches. Any shout outs you want to give?
Yeah, I want to give a quick shout out to Kosova, who great literary fiction magazine. They are some of the best. They are publishing some of the best writers out there right now. They are about to publish their 10th anniversary edition, which is absolutely massive for an indie lit magazine. Sadly, I'm not in this one, but I'm extremely proud to call myself an alum, having had 2 stories published through them. They're having an absolutely massive year. They're about to publish a book called Winning Secrets about the original D&D rules with Jeff O. Johnson. They just had a 5-figure Kickstarter. They're doing fantastic things, and just wanted to shout them out with the logo shirt and just say, congratulations, Kosova Magazine, on 10 years. Hope you have 10 more. And just you and everybody else who took the time to beta read my novella and to support me. Just know, whoever you are, named and unnamed, I very deeply appreciate everything that you did and all the time that you took to read my Scrabble. So thank you very much.
Right. I want to thank you for coming back and being a guest tonight, Michaal. Yeah, it's always so much fun talking to you, and we look forward whenever your new project comes out. Whenever your new project comes out, even if it's another 5 years, we definitely want to have you back on the show. Don't forget, everyone, to head on over to Amazon and check out Cyberpub. It comes out Friday. And if you enjoyed tonight's show, remember, like, share, subscribe to Critical Blast on YouTube. And that's it for tonight. The damn show is done.